and welcome to Pitboards and Podiums with me, Maya Westwick. In today's episode, we are going to be talking all about Sergio Perez, so buckle up and let's talk F1. Alright guys, so as I said, today we are talking all about Sergio Perez. So Perez, also known as Checo Perez, that's like his nickname. He currently drives for Red Bull Racing alongside Max Verstappen. He's 34 years old, his birthday is the 26th of January 1990, and he is an Aquarius. He was born in Guadalajara and he is married to Carolyn Martinez and they have 4 children together, so lots and lots of babies, and he is a Catholic. So to start off with some stats about Sergio Perez, his car number is the number 11. He so far in his career has got 6 wins, 35 podiums, 3 pole positions, 11 fastest laps. That is from 257 race starts. He's been entered into 261 races but not started 4 of them. And so far in his career he has 1,486 points. He holds the record for the most race starts before his first win, which was winning his 190th race start, 194th entry at the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix, and he also holds the record for the most races before a first pole position, with 215 earning his first pole at the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Before Formula 1, he started off in karting, as most of the drivers do. So he began karting at the age of 6 in 1996 and got 4 victories in the junior category, finishing as a runner-up overall. In 1997, he participated in youth class as the youngest driver in the category, earning 1 win, 5 podiums, and finishing 4th in the championship. 1998, he returned to the junior category again and became the youngest driver to become champion of that category with 8 wins, and also participated in several races in both the shifter 125cc and Master Cadets classes. In 1999, he received special permission from the Federation to participate in the 80cc shifter series due to his age. Normally, he would be too young to have done that, and he took 3 wins, finishing 3rd in the championship. Throughout 2000 to 2003, he continued competing in shifter 80cc and 125cc championships, which was part of the Telmex Challenge, bringing him to the attention of scouts for Escuderia Telmex. And this was kind of the start of his relationship with Telmex, who became a massive sponsor for him. In 2004, he competed in the US-based Skip Barber National Championship with Telmex as a team sponsor. And then in 2005, he moved over to Europe to compete in the German Formula BMW ADAC series, before in 2007 moving to Oxford to compete in British Formula 3, in which he won 2/3 of the races that year and finished all but 2 races on the podium in the national class. In the 2008 series for British F3, he graduated up to the international class and finished the season 4th in the championship. Between 2008 and 2009, he took part in the GP2 Asia series with Campos Grand Prix, and then for 2009, he moved to Arden International for the main GP2 series. And then between 2009 and 2010, he competed in 2 rounds of the GP2 Asia series with Bawa Adax, ahead of the 2010 main season campaign with them as well, finishing that in 2nd. He became a member of the Ferrari Driver Academy in October 2010 and was announced as a driver for Sauber for the next year. So he started his Formula 1 career in 2011. He made his debut with Sauber, and Sauber also announced a partnership with Perez's sponsor Telmex. He finished in the points in his first ever race as the only driver to make less than 2 pit stops at the Australian Grand Prix, but both Saubers were disqualified from the race for infringing technical regulations, so of course he didn't actually take any points from that. He did score his first ever Formula 1 points with a 9th place finish in Spain after a disappointing few races between Australia and Spain, and he was forced to miss the Monaco and Canadian Grand Prix after he had quite a heavy crash during qualifying in Monaco, in which he suffered a concussion and a sprained thigh, and obviously he needed to be able to recover from his injuries, so he was not able to take part in the Monaco Grand Prix. And then the next race at the Canadian Grand Prix, he tried to take part in the first practice session, realised he still was not up to racing and had to miss that weekend as well. He eventually finished his debut season 16th in the championship with 14 points. In 2012, he got his first ever Formula 1 podium at the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix with Sauber. He fought Fernando Alonso for the win, but was unable to pass him, so he eventually finished in P2. He got his second podium at the Canadian Grand Prix, finishing third after starting 15th. He was forced to retire from the Belgian Grand Prix after starting fourth, as Romain Grosjean caused an incident at the first corner on the first lap that involved 5 cars, including Hamilton, Alonso and Kobayashi, as well as Grosjean and Perez as well. So he had to retire from that race, even though it was looking very promising for him. He got his third podium in Formula 1 at the Italian Grand Prix after starting from 12th and finishing in P2, and he finished the championship in 10th position with 66 points, 6 more than his teammate Kobayashi. In 2013, he then moved to McLaren to replace Sir Lewis Hamilton, who was of course leaving to go to Mercedes, and that ended Perez's association with Ferrari. In the 2013 season, he had some quite spicy battles, in particular with his teammate Jenson Button and with Kimi Raikkonen. Jenson Button in the media called Perez a dirty driver, and Raikkonen quite angrily said that Perez should be punched in the face. After the 2013 Bahrain Grand Prix, Button said to ESPN, and I'm going to quote this directly for you, "I've raced with many teammates over the years and with quite an aggressive teammate in Lewis, but I'm not used to driving down the straight and then my teammate coming along and wiggling his wheels at me and banging wheels with me at 300 kilometres an hour. I've had some tough fights in Formula 1, but not quite as dirty as that. That's something you do in karting and normally you grow out of it, but that's obviously not the case with Checo. Soon something serious will happen, so he has to calm down. He's extremely quick and he did a great job today, but some of it is unnecessary and an issue when you were doing those speeds." So, of course, the dynamic in the team was not 100% amazing because Button felt that Perez was driving quite dirty and that he needed to basically grow up and drive properly for Formula 1. And Perez announced that he would be leaving McLaren at the end of the season to be replaced by Kevin Magnussen in November. And then a month later, he announced his move to Force India for 2014 alongside Nico Hülkenberg. So he was kind of put in a position for the end of that season that for a month he didn't have a guaranteed seat for the next year, so obviously that left him a little bit vulnerable, but he found one with Force India, and he finished the season 11th in the championship with 49 points. So 2014 was his first year with Force India. He scored his first podium with Force India at the Bahrain Grand Prix, which was also his own first podium since 2012, and the team's first since 2009 with a third place finish. He retired from the Monaco Grand Prix after a collision with ex-teammate Jenson Button, and he finished the season P10 in the championship with 59 points. 2015, he stayed with Force India and scored a podium finish in Russia, which was his best finish of the season. During free practice 1 of the Hungarian Grand Prix, he suffered a rear suspension failure and lost control of his car, and very, very luckily managed to walk away completely unscathed from a completely destroyed car after barrel rolling. And bearing in mind, this is in 2015, this is before the introduction of halos in Formula 1. Very, very easily, that could have killed him. Very, very easily. And he was extremely fortunate in that he managed to walk away from that completely unscathed. And he finished the season 9th with 78 points, outscoring his teammate Hülkenberg by 20 points. In 2016, once again, he's driving with Force India. He got a podium finish in Monaco, which was the 6th of his career. He got another podium finish in Baku at the European Grand Prix after passing Kimi Raikkonen on the last lap of the race for a P3, and he finished the season 7th in the championship with 101 points. In 2017, he is once again driving for Force India, this time alongside Esteban Ocon. He had a collision with Daniil Kvyat in Monaco, which ended his streak of 17 points finishes, and he collided with Ocon in Baku, where he had thought that he could challenge for the win earlier in the race, and obviously that kind of ruined that for him. He finished the season P7 in the championship with 100 points. In 2018, again, Force India and Esteban Ocon, he got a podium at Azerbaijan with a third place finish, making him the first driver to finish on the podium at the Baku City Circuit twice, so in 2016 and in 2018. After the Hungarian Grand Prix that year, Force India was put into administration, which was caused by a group of creditors, including Sergio Perez himself, taking legal action against them in order to save the team and its employees from a winding up order instigated by other creditors, and that would mean that the whole team would have to fold, basically. It would have completely collapsed the team, and obviously they didn't want to do that. So Force India is a whole thing in itself, and I can do episodes on that. There's a lot of corruption, it's just a whole thing. So obviously at the time, it was very, very unstable, especially for the people working for the team, not really knowing if they were going to have a job for the rest of that year, let alone the next year. So this group of creditors, including Perez, basically took legal action on Force India to try and basically do damage limitation to give them a chance of still having a job. So obviously this completely affected their budget, this affected their ability to develop for the next year, affected their ability to just do their job that year, but they still kind of did the best that they could. And not long before the Belgian Grand Prix, Force India's assets were bought by a consortium of investors led by Lawrence Stroll, who is the father of Lance Stroll, who at the time was driving for Williams F1. At the Singapore Grand Prix, Perez had quite an eventful race. He collided with teammate Ocon on lap 1, which caused Ocon to crash out into a wall, and he also collided with Sirotkin and earned a drive-through penalty in that race. And he also retired from his home race in Mexico that year. Eventually, he finished the season P8 in the championship with 62 points, ahead of Ocon, and as the only non-Mercedes, Red Bull or Ferrari podium finisher for the entire season. In 2019, he remained with the reformed Force India, which was now called Racing Point. So after this consortium bought it, it was renamed Racing Point and became a separate thing. And he remained with the team, now with Lance Stroll as his teammate, because obviously Lance Stroll's dad bought the team. So there was a lot of talk about Lance Stroll, about him being a pay driver to the extreme, and his dad literally buying him a seat in Formula 1 by buying the team. He was already a Formula 1 driver. Like, that, he was already in Formula 1 when his dad bought the team, but still, there's a lot of criticism about that. And Perez had a string of 8 races with no points, which was the longest streak of no points in his career, due to the lack of car development and the disruption that was caused by everything going on the year before with the administration and all of that. But he then scored points in every single race after the summer break, aside from Singapore, where he retired with an oil leak. Many of these points finishes came from quite low grid positions as well. Like, the qualifying pace was not really there for a lot of the races, including in Italy. He finished 7th from starting 18th. He finished 8th in Japan from starting 17th and 10th at the US Grand Prix after starting from the pit lane. He eventually finished the season P10 in the championship with 52 points ahead of his teammate Stroll. And in 2020, he signed an extension with Racing Point that would have had him with the team until the end of 2022. He was unable to compete in both of the races at Silverstone in 2020, so the British Grand Prix and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, due to him contracting COVID. And in September of that year, bearing in mind he'd signed a 2-year deal with the team, in September of that year, Racing Point announced that Perez would not be racing for them in 2021, as they had signed Sebastian Vettel to replace him when the team became Aston Martin for the 2021 season. As of the end of the season, like the last few races, his future was very, very uncertain. He went into the season finale thinking he didn't have a seat for the next year, thinking that could be his career over. He got his 9th Formula 1 podium at the Turkish Grand Prix, finishing P2 between Hamilton and Vettel. The prospect of him not being on the grid in 2021 was greatly discussed and called like a huge injustice by various media figures. A lot of people really didn't understand that a driver who was very talented and had proved himself to be very talented could be put in a position like that. But it's Formula 1, it happens all the time, but it seemed very unfair. He then won his first ever Formula 1 race, becoming the 110th race winner in Formula 1 at the Sakir Grand Prix towards the end of the season. It was a story of him winning it as well. It was not just that he lucked out and won it. On lap 1, he collided with Leclerc and went from P2 down to last place in the race. He then worked his way back up through the field, and by lap 64 he was back in the lead ahead of Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll. It was the first win for a Mexican driver since Pedro Rodriguez at the 1970 Belgian Grand Prix, and of course his first win in Formula 1. So he's become a race winner in Formula 1 with a car that really should not have been a race winner, to be quite honest. And at that time, he still didn't have a seat for the next year, which was absolute madness. He finished the season in 4th in the championship with 125 points. In 2021, he moved to Red Bull Racing. So after kind of really proving himself, especially at the Sakir Grand Prix, Red Bull entered talks with him and ended up signing him to be their second driver. And that meant that he was going to be driving alongside Max Verstappen. At the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, he qualified P2, which was his first front row start of his career, just 0.035 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. He won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix after Verstappen had his tyre blowout, and then Hamilton his brake magic lockup occurred on the safety car restart after the tyre blowout. So that was really good for him. That was his first win with Red Bull. He came third in Turkey after quite an intense battle with Sir Lewis Hamilton. He came third in the US Grand Prix, and he also got another P3 in Mexico, which was of course his home race and his third consecutive podium that year. His defensive work in Abu Dhabi aided Verstappen to the title victory, as did other things, of course. We've spoken about it. And he finished the season with 190 points, 1 win, 5 podiums, and he was 4th in the championship. 2022, he was once again with Red Bull. He won the Monaco Grand Prix and extended his contract to the end of the 2024 season. So his contract does come up for renewal this year, and it is looking likely that it's not going to be renewed. There's quite a lot of talk about who's going to be driving for Red Bull, and none of it really seems to be coming back to him. He got his first pole at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2022, and as I've already said, that gave him the record for the most race starts before earning your first pole position with 215 race starts. It also made him the first Mexican to achieve a pole, and at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix he finished second behind Verstappen, giving Red Bull their first 1-2 finish since Malaysia 2016. At the Spanish Grand Prix there was another 1-2 finish with Perez in second. He criticised the team orders in this one because he believed that he should have won the race, but Red Bull told him to let Verstappen through due to their differing pit strategies, because Verstappen was on a 3-stop race, Perez was on a 2-stop race. So Perez thought he should have won that race, and he really wasn't a big fan of that. He crashed in qualifying in Monaco, which fueled suspicion from Verstappen's side of the garage that had been deliberate. And then lots of tension kind of started building behind the scenes at Red Bull with their respective families, saying things and liking things on social media that were quite accusatory towards each other, and it just was not very good. He qualified third for Monaco and took the lead of the race in lap 22 after a wet start when Sainz pitted for dry tyres. Perez had already pitted earlier on for Inters and built up a good enough gap to allow him to then pit onto hards later on and remain in the lead. After a red flag, when he was now on medium tyres, his tyres degraded rapidly, but of course with it being Monaco, the 2 Ferraris and his teammate Verstappen were unable to overtake him, because obviously Monaco is very hard to overtake at the best of times. And as the clock ran down on the race and reached its 3-hour limit, that meant that he won his 3rd ever Formula 1 race. In Azerbaijan, he qualified second and passed Leclerc on the start, managing to lead the race and maintain that until Verstappen passed him, and he was told not to fight any overtake attempts, which again was a little bit suspicious from Red Bull and kind of was fueling this drama behind the scenes, because he was in the lead of the race and then he's being told on his team radio, let Verstappen past you. Why? Eventually he finished second to Verstappen, which was his 20th career podium. They got another 1-2 finish in Belgium with Perez in second. He won the Singapore Grand Prix, even though after the race he got a 5-second penalty for a safety car infringement and a reprimand. He still managed to win that race. In Japan, it was the 5th Red Bull 1-2 of the season, once again with Perez in P2. He pressured Leclerc on the last lap into making a mistake and managed to take second from Leclerc after Leclerc received a 5-second penalty for this mistake that he made where he cut a corner, which also ruled Leclerc out of the championship battle and meant that Verstappen was declared the 2022 champion in a very, very underwhelming, strange way. It was just a bit weird. He finished P3 at home in Mexico behind Verstappen and Hamilton, and in Sao Paulo he let Verstappen past with the understanding that he would be let back through if Verstappen didn't manage to gain any positions to help him win his P2 fight with Leclerc, but Verstappen didn't let him back past, which added again to this tension behind the scenes. And then to the media, Perez just said that it had been discussed internally and they were putting it behind them, because at this point there was a lot of attention on this drama going on behind the scenes. He finished the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 1.4 seconds behind Leclerc after going into this final race of the season tied on 290 points, which led him to finish the season 3rd in the championship with 305 points to Leclerc in second on 308. He finished that season with 2 wins, 1 pole position, 11 podiums and 3 fastest laps. In 2023, so last year, he was once again with Red Bull. He finished second in Bahrain, 11 seconds behind Verstappen in P1. He won the Saudi Grand Prix from pole while Verstappen was knocked out of qualifying in Q2 due to a technical issue. He finished the Australian Grand Prix 5th with the fastest lap. He won both the main and the sprint race in Azerbaijan, which makes him the first and only driver currently to have won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix twice. He finished second from pole position in Miami. For the next 5 races after Miami, he didn't make Q3 in qualifying, down to both bad luck and errors on his part. He finished Monaco in 16th, Spain in 4th, Canada in 6th with fastest lap, Austria 3rd with 2nd in the sprint race, and Britain in 6th. So he still did quite well in those 5 races, despite his poor qualifying. He finished the Hungarian Grand Prix 3rd from 9th position and got driver of the day. He couldn't finish the sprint race in Belgium due to damage from a contact with Sir Lewis Hamilton after qualifying 8th for it. And he qualified 3rd for the main race, but started 2nd due to Verstappen getting a gearbox penalty. He overtook Leclerc, but then was overtaken by Verstappen and ended up finishing 2nd. He came 4th at the Dutch Grand Prix, 2nd in Italy after starting 5th, overtaking Russell and both of the Ferraris, 8th in Singapore. He retired from the Japanese Grand Prix twice in one race, which was strange to say the least. So he had contact with Hamilton at the race start, which dropped him back because he had to change his front wing, and he also received a penalty for a safety car infringement. He then hit Magnussen on lap 12 and appeared to have retired from the race after that contact, but then on lap 40 he went back out on the track, came into the pits to serve his penalty to ensure that it wasn't then carried over into Qatar because he hadn't served it, and obviously they can't add it to his race time because he'd retired from the race. So he went back out, did a lap round, came into the pits, served his penalty, lap back round, retired. Kind of a bit of a loophole there. And he came 10th in Qatar after multiple penalties. He crashed out of the sprint race as collateral of contact between Ocon and Hülkenberg. He qualified 13th for the main race and 8th for the sprint, knowing that he needed to outscore Verstappen by 32 points to keep his title hopes alive. So obviously, only coming 10th, he did not outscore Verstappen by 32 points that weekend. Like, he needed to have basically won both the races, and he didn't. So Verstappen was confirmed champion of the 2023 season. He came 4th in the US Grand Prix with 5th place in the sprint race. He retired from his home race in Mexico, came 4th in Sao Paulo with 3rd place in the sprint, 3rd in Las Vegas, 4th in Abu Dhabi, and finished the season 2nd in the championship with 2 wins, 2 poles, 2 fastest laps, and 9 podiums on 285 points. So that is everything that I was going to say about Checo Perez. Obviously, his future past this season is looking a little bit uncertain at the moment, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, if he decides to just retire because he's been in Formula 1 for years and years and years, if he manages to get a seat somewhere else, you know, it will be very interesting to see what happens with that. But I wish him all the best for the 2024 season, and hopefully, you know, he could impress another team somewhere and they will choose to sign him for 2025. I hope you have enjoyed the episode. If you have, please do let me know. You know, like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please share the podcast. It would mean the absolute world to me. I would really, really, really appreciate it. And I will see you again very, very soon. I've got an episode about Lewis moving to Ferrari coming up soon, and then next week I'm going to be talking about Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. So do stick around for those. I'll see you very, very soon, and thank you very much for watching / listening, depending what you're consuming this on, you know. Bye.